Hello! In this video we're going to take a look at place value for whole numbers. We're going to see two different types of questions here. The first type of question, you'll be given a number in what's called standard form. That's the way you typically see numbers written out with numerals, and you'll be asked to write it in English or in words. And the second kind of question will be the opposite of that. You'll be given a number in words, and you'll be asked to write it out back in standard notation. Now I'm using the place value table on page 4 of the textbook for this. If you take a look at that place value table, it breaks down most of the place values that you'll need. I do encourage you to try to remember and internalize these place values though, since it'll be handy information to have at the tip of your fingers. So when you're looking at place value, typically for whole numbers, you start measuring place values from the far right of the number. You see a decimal point here. That's not typically written for whole numbers, but it's a reminder here that that's where the whole number kind of starts. And the first place value is the ones, followed by the tens to the left of that, the hundreds to the left of that, and the thousands, and so on. And those are probably fairly familiar. Just as important as the place values, though, are the periods. Now, you don't typically see the word period used to refer to this, but it is the technical term. And a period is that group of 3 digits that's separated by a comma. So you see the comma right here separates out the ones or units period from the thousands period. Again, those periods are groups of 3 digits that have commas between them. And then there's another comma here separating the thousands from the millions period. And then you'd have the billions period and the trillions period and so on. And really, you're going to be referring to those periods when you're writing out whole numbers in words. So let's take a look at an example. Our first example will ask us to write the following number in words. And this is our number. Whoa, that is huge. That actually is a fairly significant number. That is the current United States national debt as of this morning. So this is actually kind of topical. You'll probably hear about this in the news a little bit. The debt ceiling is a big deal, and Congress is currently trying to figure out the budget for the year, and there has been a lot of discussion about this. So it's good to have an idea of how big that number is and to be able to compare it to things. So how would we actually read this number out in words? Well, we're going to take a look at those periods. Again, these commas here separate our groups of 3. So I've got my units or ones. This next group here is the thousands. Then comes millions. Then comes billions. So this number is all the way out in the trillions. That's massive. And if we wanted to read this in English, you would read out each period or each group of 3 as a normal number and then follow it by the period name. So this 19 here, I would say 19 and then trillions. It's in the trillions. Same thing for the next period. This next group of 3 digits, I would just read that as 977, and then I'd have to say billion because it's in the billions period. And then followed by this last number. Well, the 0 doesn't really tell you much, but the 35 here says, okay, that's 35 million. And that's what our answer is going to look like. Now notice I took the commas from the original and I brought them down. So that comma went right there. So if there are commas separating periods in the original in standard form, you're going to want to write them in your answer. You'll also notice that I had 0 thousands and 0 units here, so I don't have to mention those in my answer. If you've got $0, you don't go around bragging, hey, I've got $0,000 in my pocket, so same thing's going to happen here. If a period's all zeros, you don't have to tell me about it. Leave that off of your answer. Last little detail that's important to remember is you see these hyphens here. Whenever you see a number word ending in Y, like 30 or 70, any of those tens place number words ending in Y, if they're followed by another number, you're going to want to hyphenate. If it's just 70 on its own without a number after it, just a period name after it, you wouldn't hyphenate that. But if it's followed by another number, definitely put that hyphen in there. If you leave those commas or hyphens out of your homework post, I will definitely post a little follow-up asking you to please correct those and put them in. And the Hawk software is going to be very nitpicky about that, so please make sure you do those. All right, next type of question is like this. Write the following number in standard form. What does that mean? That means I'm going to take a number that's written out in words and try to write it in numerals and digits. So I'm going to take a look at this 1,062,000, and the temptation here is to just put 1 followed by a bunch of zeros and hope for the best, but don't fall for that. We're going to look at the period name here and let that break things down for us. So I know I've got my units period, my thousands, and my millions. So if I were to write this out, my 1 million would mean I'm starting with a 1, comma, and then that's my millions. After that should come the thousands. Well, it doesn't say anything about thousands here. That means I have none of them, so I will have to put in some placeholder zeros. Since there's no thousands mentioned in the words here, I'm going to put in 3 zeros for my thousand period. The period thousands has nothing in it, so I just put in zeros. And then my last period, the units period, so I'll put my comma, is 62, so I can write in my 62. Now that feels kind of awkward because you're expecting 3 digits in a period, and in fact you should have 3 digits here. So you notice I left a little space here, and that's because if you don't have 3 digits in a period, you always put in zeros to the left until you've got all 3 digits. So there's our answer. Here it is written in nice handwriting as opposed to my horrible scrawl here. 1 million, there's no thousands, so we don't write anything for them, 62, just like that. So to summarize, the place value table on page 4 is super useful for rewriting numbers either in words or in standard notation. When you're doing that, you want to think of breaking things down into the periods or groups of 3 rather than just the specific place values. When you are doing that, also make sure to pay attention to important details like commas and hyphens. And if you're rewriting numbers in standard form, always be careful about where to put those placeholder zeros in.